Well, just how popular is the 30-06? Is it the best one cartridge, one rifle setup? And is it really going obsolete? Well, what about fast twist barrels? Are they worth the investment? Boy, we've got a lot of questions. We're going to dive right into it on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. We heard from one of our patrons recently, Dan, talking about the 30-06. I'm getting a lot of negative comments on a video I did on my other channel about the 30-06 going obsolete. Most people said I was full of it and didn't know what I was talking about. But in that video, I touched on some issues that I think are changing people's perspectives on the 30-06. And Dan here has some pretty good insights onto that. Ron, I noticed that the topic of whether 30-06 is still popular or not came up again in last night's podcast. While I don't recall mentioning this to you before, I remember back in mid-2020 when there was a panic buying and a big shortage of, for some reason, not sure why, of course, a shortage of the 308, 223, and 9x19, the 9mm handgun round. Those were easily available just about anywhere, as was, of course, 12 gauge and a bit of 20 gauge, but the rest were a little hard to find. And when the occasional box of something else did show up, it was almost always a 30-06 or a 30-30. Kind of speaks to their popularity on the civilian market, at least in rural Michigan. Also, I wonder if new rifles aren't as popular with those chamberings for a couple of reasons. First off, of course, it's the new school train of thought about getting the last little bit of an edge in the cartridge. Nerdiness and crunching all the little numbers does seem to be more popular these days after all. Second is price. Those three current military chamberings I mentioned can have some of the ammo coming in surplus from the military factories, which keeps the cost down, and this encourages people on a strict budget who want some live fire practice to buy those chamberings and cartridges. In the current economy, that's going to be extremely common. And with more people buying a few certain cartridges, well, that makes those even less expensive, a circle of low cost that keeps feeding itself. Many people already have access to their grandparents' old Winchester 70s and 94s, Remington 700s, and that sort of thing, often chambered for 30-06 or the 30-30. These days, the gun world still has a bit of ideological battle or rivalry of sorts between the classic wood furniture and the newer, albeit now 60-year-old, tactical design of the AR platforms. ARs are flying off the shelves into the hands of new shooters who want the latest and greatest. Thank you for the time you put into reading the input of every random nut like me and still making some of the most straightforward, down-to-earth, educational content that can be found on modern entertainment platforms. Well, thank you, Dan. See, Dan had some good insights on this whole situation. Certainly, as most of the folks who wrote in about that 30-06 going obsolete, it is not on its way to obsolescence, but I do see a decline in the popularity for the reasons that Dan outlined here and a few others, but there are so many rifles already chambered for it, and ammunition is pretty ubiquitous, that I do think it will hang around for quite a while yet. But the 308 Winchester seems to be taking its place as a kind of general all-around cartridge for 30 caliber big game hunting, and as well as kind of target shooting and plinking. In fact, it owns the market in the 30 caliber field for long-range shooting to mid-range target shooting, just because it's so economical, comes in short actions and all the rest. So say what you will about it, I think the 30-06 is not quite as popular as it used to be, but plenty of great reasons to still have and use it. Now let's hear from Russell, another patron, and he's talking about fast twist barrels, it looks like. Is it worth getting a factory 1-in-9 twist 22-250 and just shooting factory ammo if I want to shoot at targets and maybe someday take it to the field in hopes of taking a deer? It seems like factory ammo has this chambering relegated to varmints with the exception of a 65 grain load from Winchester. There is a company called Copper Creek that loads very heavy bullets like 75 grain and so on, but they're kind of boutique and cost more. Even though the 223 Remington is ubiquitous, I still can't get over the feeling that it's just sort of a recreational cartridge for people who like to do mag dumps with their ARs. I guess another question is, do the lower grain weights in a 22-250 shoot as accurately as the higher grain weights in the 223? I really like the 22-250, but I'm going to be a factory ammo guy, so should I get the fast twist? Yeah, Russell, that's a great question. Of course, a lot of people are interested in different twist rates these days. There seems to be a lot of emphasis on it. And it's kind of odd that the lower power 223, which shoots the same bullets as the 22-250, would be loaded with heavier bullets. Can't push them as fast as the 22-250 could. So it's always struck me that that's the one that should be getting chambered with the 60 grain to 75 grain bullets. But their twist rate of the 22-250 has long been 1 in 12 or 1 in 14, and it won't stabilize much more than about 55 to 60 grain bullet. And that's why you always see those. Whereas the 223, as the 5.56 NATO military cartridge, has been designed and built with much faster twist barrels in many cases, especially in those AR-style rifles. And that's why they have the heavier bullets. So why would you want to shoot a heavier bullet in your 22-250? Long range, high BC bullets are more efficient. So if you're expecting to shoot farther distances and you want to minimize your wind deflection, you would want to go with a longer, heavier, higher BC bullet. Is it worth it? Shopping for a 1 in 9 twist? I would say not if you're buying factory ammo, as you implied, Russ. But if you're hand loading, certainly is worth doing. I did this many, many years ago. Not only did I get the fast twist barrel, but I got it throated, reamed out for an actually improved version of the 22-250. And I've just really, really appreciated using that over the years with bullets as heavy as 75 grains. So I can definitely recommend it from my experience, but it certainly isn't necessary. 55 grain bullets in a 22-250 will perform just fine out to 400, probably even 500 yards. I don't know that I've ever tried shooting anything with it farther than that. Most of the stuff comes inside of 300. All right, here is Brandon, another patron. As a new patron, I feel it is my duty to speak up for everyone listening to your podcasts on Apple Podcasts. I don't know if it is on every platform, but the commercials being inserted in your podcasts are nearly always inserted when you or a guest are mid-sentence. I'm not exactly sure that is within your power to fix, but it would be much appreciated. I look forward to your podcast every week, and I always learn something. Well, Brandon, I apologize for that. I have no control over it. I don't know where and why they put those in there. It's just part of the platform. Honestly, I have to tell you, I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to podcasts. I do the podcast, but I'm not even sure how to upload one myself. Betsy's the podcast listener in this family.
Well, I think we don't have any control over that. We've had the same complaints with Spotify too.
Yeah.
But you can go to RSO TV, and for $5 a month, you can get ad-free.
There's my saleswoman. Yes, RSO TV. What we do is we put all of my videos and podcasts on RSO TV ad-free, so you can listen there and never hear an interruption. But I appreciate you bringing that up, Brandon. We may ask the team to investigate a little bit.
You have to go to our website to get on RSO TV. So go to ronspomeroutdoors.com.
There you go. The saleswoman's at it again. Pow! I think I'd starve if it weren't for that woman. All right, let's hear from Max. Max is another patron. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Spomer, bingo. Betsy, you're in on this one. So if he's chewing me out, you're getting half of it. I am a 26-year-old who has never hunted a day in his life. But since college, I've had an interest. Last year, my father died and left me a bit of cash, so naturally, I bought a rifle to honor his memory. Well, that's nice. I got a Weatherby Mark V Custom Deluxe in a 6.5 by 300 Weatherby Magnum. Wow. Max, that is one heck of a first rifle you've got there. That's the fastest and flattest shooting 6.5 out there. Let's see what else he has to say. I'm planning to also acquire a .264 Winchester Magnum and a 6.5 Remington Magnum to have the 6.5 belted trifecta. That's an interesting collection angle. I think my father would get a kick out of such a nice rifle, especially since he thought ARs were ugly as sin. My question is that I was recently reading through an old book called Handbook for Shooters and Reloaders by P.O. Ackley. He had a chapter on the dangers of reduced loads. Specifically, when a powder charge does not sit uniformly in a case, the flame from a weak primer igniting will run up along the surface of the powder charge, causing inconsistent burn rates and dangerous pressure spikes, which leads to exploding guns and injury to the shooter. Does this have any credence with either you or your lovely wife? I suppose it could be, and as is P.O. Ackley, I'm leaning to give him the benefit of the doubt. I never heard of anything like this, but what do I know? My Mark V is my first rifle, and I've only shot it 9 times so far at an indoor range. And while I've been planning to get into reloading for years, I haven't done it yet. Best wishes and happy holidays. Well, Max, you got yourself into something here. Indoor shooting with the 6.5 300 Weatherby, that's wild. So you are looking at some super magnums here on all of these and your 6.5 belted trifecta, none of which really lend themselves to good reduced load shooting. But the general idea that you outlined that you took from P.O. Ackley is accurate and exactly what happens. You have a lot of empty space in that case, less powder. And when you hold the rifle horizontally or a little bit lower, the powder runs away from the primer. So the primer flame can shoot over the top of the powder and ignite the front as well as the back. And you get sort of a double explosion in there. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it does create an unusual burn rate that raises the chamber pressures, and it has blown up more than a handful of guns. It is a well-known phenomenon. So anyone who is trying to build reduced loads needs to do a lot of research. Many of the reloading manuals will talk about this, describe it, and list some loads. Most commonly, I find them in the spear manuals. They've always done a good job, especially in some of the common deer hunting cartridges like 30-30, 30-06, 308. A lot of guys will make reduced loads for those, and then when they're out deer or elk hunting and they come across a forest grouse, for instance, or a snowshoe hare or some small game for the camp meat pot, they can put that round in and head shoot them. So it's kind of popular, but it's also great for practicing. Now, I think you're going to have trouble. I don't know that I would even try it in a big Magnum case like that. It's just really difficult. So do your research. You might be able to come up with something useful on it, but do be careful because that is a real phenomenon, the exploding light load. All right. Now here is, I think, our last. Yeah, this is Hunter, and he is the last of our patrons today. Hi, Ron. This week you were talking about the never-ending debate about energy, velocity, and the like. It made me think of a book I once read about ancient warfare. I do not remember the book title, but there was an account of a battle that lasted hours and hours, and a man was impaled by a ballista bolt through the chest, and he was still alive after hours and hours of lying in a field. Now, guys, a ballista bolt is just a big arrow. The ballista was a giant crossbow, essentially, a big machine that they built. Gosh, the Greeks had them. The Romans were using them like 50 BC, way back when. And they would, very difficult, I suppose, to crank it up to get that string back, like on a crossbow. And then it would shoot a really big, heavy bolt. And this guy was apparently impaled by one. And he survived it, sounds like. We do not know exactly where he was hit or how long he lived with that in his chest, but I would imagine a ballista would create a lot of hemorrhaging along with tons of energy. So maybe the answer to the question is a simple one. Some animals are just tougher than others, more have a will to live, or maybe it's just luck. Who knows? I believe that some animals have more fight in them than others. Yeah, you shoot a pronghorn with a 375 H&H at 100 yards, and there's still no guarantee he'll drop on the spot. Boy, that's true. My point is, there are certain cartridges better suited for some than others for certain applications, but there is no guarantee, no magic bullet. Also, think of all the people shot in the head that lived, as well as the animals that took a broad a broadhead to the eye and lived on. Thanks for allowing me to rant. P.S. This is in no way me saying that I don't agree with what you said about proper shot placement. It is absolutely key. And I also believe that there is a balance to be struck between energy and velocity, penetration, and the like. But I just wanted to share my thoughts. Have a great day, Ron. Well, thanks, Hunter. And that's a good point. There must have been a lot of energy in that big ballista bolt that skewered that guy, and he was still alive. You can speculate, well, the bolt sealed off, so there wasn't much hemorrhaging. If you pull it out, suddenly there would be. There are many cases like that of people that have been impaled by arrows and garden stakes and all sorts of things. And even, I remember one story about a young man that fell off of his grandmother's shed roof or something onto a rebar that was, I think she was using it for a tomato stake. Talk about deadly implements. This kid fell on it, penetrated his heart, and they left it in, and the EMTs took him to the hospital where the doctors were then able to close up the wounds, the suture, or whatever, but the boy lived with that through part of his heart. So it says a lot about what you were talking about. Just the different little situations can change things remarkably. And I shot a buck with 6 inches of arrow in its chest, just missed the spine. It was lodged under the spine, had gone through some of the top of the lung, and the lung was adhering to the rib cage in that area. The lungs don't normally do that. And there was a bit of protective growth around that arrow, but it was in there, and the deer was perfectly fat and healthy and doing the normal stuff. Had no idea there was any kind of an injury. I couldn't even see that injury on the outside, but there was that about 6 inches of aluminum arrow with the fletching and the knock still on it inside. And, of course, many, many people have found that. Animals are just remarkably durable, so you can't always expect to shoot them with a bigger, heavier, whatever, with more energy and have them drop on the spot. It just doesn't work that way. All right, now here is some folks are weighing in on this one gun idea. I've done some videos on beware the man with one gun. He probably knows how to use it. And a lot of people, it seems like the majority are saying, no, not really. But a few of them agree with me. Let's just dive into this one. Here's from Gregory. When I bought my first 30-06, I practiced with it. I cleaned it, I glass bedded it, I developed loads, I calculated trajectories, then I tested my calculations, I shot bench rest, offhand, sitting, and prone. I carried a lot, and I shot better than I ever have since. So that sort of supports the beware the man with one gun. The idea is, of course, that you're so familiar with it that you can really shoot well. The next gentleman, Aaron, says, this is an outdated philosophy. Jack of all trades is a better one. You should know multiple weapon platforms and be proficient with all of them. That's a good idea as well, but I think it's a little more difficult. When you shoot multiple platforms, as I do, you just have a lot more to remember. It's not as instinctive. There's not so much, shall we call it, muscle memory anymore. You don't really know exactly how that bullet's going to drift and drop and all the rest of it, because you have to stop and think, now wait a minute, am I using my 223 or my 7-rem mag or my 30-30? And there gets to be a lot of differences, and then you end up with all these different drop and drift tables in your head, and it becomes a bit more challenging. But I agree, if you can do all of that, you're going to be a more versatile and well-rounded shooter. So I think the important thing is each of us gets to make up our own minds. How about Glenn? 30-06, so versatile over all other calibers. Yeah, the 30-06 is often referred to as the most versatile cartridge. Its main competition is the 375 H&H Magnum, and that one gets the nod when they're thinking Africa and larger animals like Cape Buffalo. Otherwise, for North America, for instance, 30-06 has done it all. And actually, it's done it all in Africa, too. They've even taken lots of elephants with it, no problem. Not legal necessarily in some jurisdictions. So I can agree that the 30-06 is a remarkably versatile middle-of-the-road cartridge that can pretty much do everything. But I don't know that it's so versatile over all other calibers. If you take a careful look at, say, the 7mm, like a 280 Remington, which is not all that popular but should be, or the 7-rem mag or any of these, The reason the 30-06 is considered versatile is because there have been bullet weights from 100 grains up to 250 grains that can be loaded on it. So that means it can do a lot of things. Well, with the 7 millimeters, I have found 100 grain bullets all the way up to 180 grain bullets. They may be up to 190 now in some of the new cartridges. That pretty much puts it up there in that same versatility district as the 30-06. And then, of course, you can apply that to any of the 300 Magnums. I would have to say the 300 Winchester Magnum would be more versatile than the 30-06 because not only does it shoot the same bullets, but it can shoot them faster. So you can load it up or down, so you can do everything the 30-06 does and a little bit more. So if you think about it, it probably applies to a lot of different cartridges out there. But the general idea, I think, is valid. So thanks for that, Glenn. Here is Bjorja Bear. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It looks like a Scandinavian name with a slash through the O, and B-J-O-R-J-A, Bjorja Bear. Be interested to know exactly how to pronounce that. At any rate, here's what he says. Somehow, our erstwhile neighbors have convinced you lot that the 6.5 by 55 should be called the Swede. I must call on my Norwegian-American friends here to rectify this. The 6.5 by 55 is the product of the Norwegian-Swedish Rifle Commission of 1893, whose goal was to create a common military rifle round for both countries. The Swedes never fired a 6.5 by 55 in anger, while Norway had the 6.5 55 as our main rifle round during the Nazi invasion in 1940. So do us Norwegians a favor and just call it the 6.5 by 55. There you go, guys. I didn't know that, but it's kind of fun to learn. I don't think we're going to have much success getting rid of the Swede, though. It's been there forever. It's on all the ammo boxes. It's in all the hand loading manuals. It is referred to as the 6.5 55 Swede. But if any of you wish to support your Norwegian friends or your Norwegian heritage, you can call it the 6.5 by 55 or 6.5 55 Norski or Norwegie. I'm not sure how you would do that. Interesting. Learn some fun history from you guys. Thanks for that. How about Anthony? This is a very intriguing cartridge that will take some market share from the 22-250, 243, and the like. I'm not sure which cartridge he's talking about. Let's see if we can figure it out. It's similar to how the 6.5 Creedmoor ate into the 7mm 08 and the 308 market. That it certainly did. I agree with that. Now, Anthony continues, I am no longer an early adopter of newer calibers because I've been burned before on the next Wonder Loudenboomer. Once I see greater than a dozen or more readily available commercial loadings and major firearms manufacturers producing rifles, well, then I will bite. Currently, it seems that you have to go to custom or buy from a Gucci niche company. The lack of mid-tier rifles and ammo is keeping me away for now. Gosh, I'm still not sure what he's talking about. It might be the 22 Creedmoor. Also, living east of the Mississippi, the 22 ARC offers a better proposition and flexibility on the AR platform. This 22 Creed is cool, and it will smoke some critters out yonder, but probably too much gun for Fox. Time will tell if this is the next 22 Nosler, 223 WSSM, or 224 Valkyrie and Forgotten. Yeah, that's a good point, Anthony. A lot of folks are in the same boat as you on these new cartridges. And if you've got kind of something close, why jump on the bandwagon before you know for certain that the thing's going to hang around for a while? Personally, I would probably jump on that 22 Creedmoor because having shot the 22-280 or 22-250 Ackley Improved for so many years, and comparing it to this Creedmoor, I see that it's pretty much the same thing. But the 22-250 AI, of course, is a Wildcat. You have to fire form brass. If you get the Creedmoor version, you're right there. You buy the rifle. It already has a fast twist barrel. You can buy the ammo. And if you're a handler like I am, you can make anything you want out of it. So I would go that route now rather than the Ackley Improved version. But if you're happy with your ARC or any of your other 22s, you certainly don't have to jump on that 22 Creed. But it is a darned effective cartridge at driving those longer high BC bullets remarkably fast and accurately. So thanks for bringing all that up. You're analyzing it quite nicely. This is Sierra talking about world's rarest rifle. What earmuffs are those? My Howard Light Impact Sport ear shells just bit the dust after 15 years of service. Well, that's good on the Howard Light Impact Sport shells that you're buying there. But the ones that I've been wearing are Shell Shocks. It's a new company. I think it's family owned, and they were, for a time, I think they still are. They're offering 10% off. If you use code RSO10, you can get 10% off on those, and I have really liked them. I find them to be extremely comfortable. Some of those clamp-on ear shells for knocking down the noise of a shot are really tight, and some of them make you sweat. This thing has a really soft seal around the shell that's extremely comfortable, and I found that to be their best value. They knock off, 28 to 30 decibels of sound, which is sort of the standard, so they do that job, and they're also electronic, so you can hear folks on the range and whatnot. Pretty good option there, and they're not all that expensive, so that's one that I can recommend. Here is from Pure, talking about a video called Old Rifles Rule. That was one of our shorts that did really well. Let's see what Pure has to say about it. My dad passed down his Model 70 to me, and I still hunt with it today. I downed a deer at 307 yards this year for my personal best shot. That rifle has held the nickname Meat in the Pot for generations. I like that. Old rifles that have been in the family for a while, and they take on names based on their performance. That's always fun. Yeah, that short got a lot of support, of course, because there are so many of us who have inherited old rifles or bought them way back when, and we just find that they've worked so darn well and continue to work well. This particular 243 is owned by my friend Steve. We have him on the show every once in a while with his rifles. Call him Model 70 Steve because of that. He's always getting them and fixing them up or restoring the stocks or something. But it's amazing how accurate his rifles are. Pretty much right when he gets them, cleans the barrel, starts shooting, and they're doing sub-MOA, which I don't know, people just don't expect those old 1950s and 1940s rifles to shoot that well. But there they go. What I said on that short was, here's a rifle that does not have a chassis, does not have a carbon fiber barrel or stock, doesn't have an extendable butt plate on it or riseable, adjustable comb, and all these new features that a lot of people think you need for accuracy. And yet, sitting at that bench with that old clunker, Steve shoots a .4 something inch group, sub half MOA with that old rifle. So yeah, old rifles rule. Here is Wade talking about lever actions. There is nothing wrong with that rifle. Just stop short stroking it. I don't know exactly what he's talking about yet. Let's see if we can figure this one out. I don't like to give you too much of a hard time, but sometimes you're full of it. That's giving me a hard time, buddy. The trigger I took down myself on my BLR. Browning lever action rifle. There we go. But you might want to have a good gunsmith do it, since it takes some good nerves to put it back together, sort of like a grandfather clock. But once you do it, it's easy afterwards. It's like riding a bike. The first time is a pain, and when you run one, you will have to run it solid and strong, and if you short stroke it like you did, it will not pick up the next round. I see. Operator error, Ron. The Henry rifles are the same way, but I like the Browning postal grip. Postal grip? Don't know what that is. And they are just as accurate as a bolt rifle. Aim small, good hunting, God bless. Oh, I got you now, Wade. Yeah, this all makes sense. I've only worked with that Browning BLR ratchet system lever action. It's really quite efficient. I don't like the look of it as much as the traditional Winchester Marlin lever actions, but it certainly is accurate. I did find that. And so is the Henry. Henry has a version of it. I think it's just a copy, but it might just be similar rather than a copy. But boy, they sure look the same to me. But I had a Henry in 223 Remington that would shoot half MOA, a lever action shooting half MOA. And it does not have a tubular magazine. It has the bottom dropout style magazine. So you you can shoot pointy bullets, and all the efficiency is right there. So anyone who likes the idea of a lever action or just simply loves them and enjoys them, don't think that you're relegated to the old 30-30s and that sort. You can use modern cartridges in both the Browning BLR and the Henry. Henry calls theirs Long Ranger, I believe. So you might want to look into those. Greasy. Ron, after that look, how long did you have to eat cold food and drink lukewarm coffee in the house, the doghouse with Oh my gosh. Let's read that again. Greasy says, Ron, after that look, how long did you have to eat cold food and to drink lukewarm coffee in the doghouse with Covey? This must be referring to the famous look Betsy gave me in a video we did of her shooting her 7mm 08 when I was sort of husbandly-like criticizing her, shall we call it, difficulty in chambering or loading a magazine in that rifle. And she gave me this withering look that all the husbands out there recognized instantly. I tell you what, wives can do that. They don't have to yell at us. They can just give us that look. And we are toast. However, Covey is a great dog, and she and I had a good time in the doghouse drinking lukewarm coffee. And dog food's not all that bad if you haven't tried it. Well, here is something I never thought I would be doing on my videos: lighting a scented candle. Well, there's something else I never thought I would be doing on my videos: selling scented candles. Now, wait a minute. How did all this come about? How did I come up with a jar in which there is wax and a wick to make a candle with my name on the outside of oh my gosh, it's Ron Spomer Trophy Room Scented Candle. It smells like a trophy room. What is going on? I will read to you a letter. This came unsolicited in the mail the other day. Dear Ron, your YouTube channels are my favorites. I watch them regularly and I thoroughly enjoy them. You and I are the same age, so I can relate to your many references that younger viewers may not. Well, I am sending you 2 candles that I made for you to enjoy. I would like to collaborate with you to make more for our mutual benefit. The bottom line is that I need extra income to support my gun and hunting addiction. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the candles as much as I enjoy your videos. Regards, Gary. So this was so cool, I couldn't resist. I called Gary. I checked out his website. Gorgeous website. He seriously is making all sorts of scented candles, and I love his tongue-in-cheek humor. Trophy room scent in a candle? I don't know. I think a lot of guys might just enjoy this. At any rate, I have agreed to sort of go into partnership with Gary on the Ron Spomer Trophy Room Scented Candle, silly though it may seem. So if you guys are interested in buying some scented candles, or if you ladies are interested in freshening up the smell of the den of the trophy room, well, you might want to check out Western Wick Candles Company. I will give you the address here. It's westernwicks.com is the website. And Gary and his wife just started this business, it says, in October of 2024. And boy, I've got to support anybody who's doing a sideline business to help him afford more guns and more hunting time afield. So you might want to check out westernwicks.com. Oh, and if you order quickly, you can get these in time for Christmas and a price break. Just use the code RSO10 to get 10% off and free shipping for Christmas. Wade. Wade is referencing a 30-6-week video of some kind. He says that I should shoot 5-shot groups. Many say that. Better indicator of what happens out in the field. But shooting in front of a camera, well, then you're going to receive every known complaint to man that you are doing wrong. And no matter what your wrong is that you're doing, when you're right, I know that this is getting confusing. So you're going to receive every known thing to man that you are doing wrong. And no matter what you're wrong about, even when you're right, I know that I am perfect all the time, and I never go wrong. I have a lake property in Death Valley that no one else can locate. With my rifle, I can shoot around corners. I save a lot of ammunition that way. Yep, we're all perfect. Aim small, good hunting, God bless. Okay, so Wade here is tongue-in-cheek, a little bit sarcastic. He's making fun of folks who write in and say, I'm not doing things right. And if you get in front of the camera and put yourself on YouTube, you'll get all kinds of advice about how to do things right because you're doing it wrong. But Wade never does anything wrong, and he can shoot around corners. I wish I had that skill. Obviously, he's joking. But thanks for bringing up those points, Wade. Yeah, it just comes with the territory. Anytime you're throwing yourself out there in public on YouTube or something like that, folks are going to weigh in, and they're either going to say, hey, great job, you're doing what I would do, so that pats me on the back, or they're going to say, you're doing it all wrong, I do it right. And again, they pat themselves on the back. Nah, no big deal. All right, let's see what Charles has to say. Not much. Short sentence. We can't wait until you're obsolete. Oh, I remember this one. This was that video I mentioned earlier about the 30-06 cartridge going obsolete. I don't know that Charles watched that whole video because most of the folks who chewed me out about it just saw the headline and call it clickbait. A lot of them did. But there's a lengthy explanation, of course, in that about the 30-06 and its performance and why I think it is starting to just lose popularity. So one day it probably will go obsolete. But boy, at any rate, Charles didn't like it, so he says he can't wait until I'm obsolete. Only he did not have his grammar and spelling correct. He made the common mistake of using your, Y-O-U-R, instead of you are. So when you say you're obsolete, what follows that? It's got to be your obsolete gun or your obsolete cartridge or something. So at any rate, I gave in to the human instinct to slap back. I tried to resist that, but I had to do a little bit on this one. So I pulled up my old English teacher grammarian here and I said, hey, Charles, my obsolete what? Your incomplete sentence needs an object for its adjective followed by a predicate. Thank you. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. But to his credit, Charles bounced right back. He said, Ron, I am playing off of your incomplete title. Let me write the whole title. The 30-06 will be obsolete in the next 1,000 years. Lots of laughs. So, Charles, thanks for taking all of that in good humor. I really appreciate that. After that, Charles and I compared a few more notes here, and he seems like he's a good guy. And I can understand him and anyone else who loves the 30-06 being upset with me saying it's going obsolete, but it is not. But it was a good way to launch the discussion and get people to watch. You know, folks will say, how dare you use these clickbait titles? Stop with the clickbait titles and all the rest of it. And I thought about it, and I don't particularly like clickbait titles either, but the design, the idea with clickbait titles is to get you to watch the video. It's advertising. And really, when you think about it, it applies to all things that we buy. Every builder and seller of a product puts some kind of good spin on it or hype or something to get your attention. And that's why they put beautiful men and women on the advertising pages rather than us ordinary homely ones. They want your attention. That's clickbait. So I do say that I don't throw clickbait out with nothing behind it. My videos, I think, at least I try to make videos that are in-depth with good, solid information. So once you fall for the clickbait, you are going to get some good entertainment and or information, or both, ideally. So chew me out about those things. I think that's more appropriate than the titles. We just put those snazzy titles on there to get you to click. That's why they call it clickbait. All right, well, let's see what the team has sent me here. They sent me a blank screen, but I'll bet I could fire it up if I tried real hard. Yes, indeedy. No, there it is. Oh, my, that's the second time in a row. Jim from Arkansas. Hey, Ron, love your show. You recently did a show about the 22 Creedmoor and had a beautiful off-white and brown hooded coat on. Where can I find that coat? In my closet. Oh, Jim, I don't want you going through my closet, so you might want to look into weatherwool.com. Weatherwool is a small family-owned company in New Jersey, of all places. Really nice guy. He stopped out here a couple of years ago to visit and show me some of his products I have been wearing for, 5 or 6 years. Been longer than that?
10.
10 years, wow. And they're merino wool garments, really, really well made in the USA. It's just a great company, and they do things right. If you're looking for wool garments, these are not inexpensive. It's high quality, beautiful craftsmanship on putting them together. Looks to me like they'll last many a lifetime, really. Great product. So Weather Wool is where you want to go for that. They've got shirts and anoraks and jackets and all kinds of stuff. All right, Kevin from Michigan. Ron, I have an old Yugoslavian K98 in 8mm Mauser. I got it on a trade, and it's still mostly in military configuration, except for a peep sight someone added. The outside of the rifle is in decent shape, but the bore, that looks awful. Would it be worth it to have this old workhorse rebored for 35 Whelen? I also just learned that there is an Ackley improved version of the 35 Whelen. Would that be an even better option? I do hand load, and I've been checked the magazine, and it'll fit 30-06 length cartridges with a bit of room to spare for seating depth adjustments. I am also looking to buy back my first bolt-action rifle from a friend of mine. It's a sporterized 1903 Springfield in 30-06. It never shot well. The best I could manage was 2 MOA groups with most ammo, shooting closer to 3 or 3.5 MOA. Would this be a better candidate for a 35 Whelen? Yeah, it sure would, Kevin. I am not that familiar with the Yugoslavian K98, but that's the Mauser 98 action. I don't know if the quality is up to the original Germans, but very well could be. So you should be just fine with that. It's a big, heavy action. The Springfield 03, that's the U.S. military rifle that came out in 1903 in the 30-03 cartridge that just 3 years later was modified and made into the 30-06. And it's patterned on the Mauser, so it's real similar. It has the outside leaf extractor and the controlled round feed and all those. Both of them will be about the same. The Springfield should be a little bit lighter, and obviously that one was specifically designed for the 30-06, and the 35 Whelen is just the 30-06 necked up to 35 caliber, so I think that one would probably be easiest, but really neither one of them is much different because you're just going to be changing the barrel. The action, the magazine, everything else should be fine. The I don't know, the M98 magazine length might be a little smaller than the 303. I'm no expert on that. But yeah, you should do well with either one of those. And yes, if you go with the Ackley improved version, you're going to, I don't know that it's worth it. Really, the 35 Whelen is so effective. I don't think you gain much by, it's not like it's a long-range cartridge anyway. So what's another 100 feet per second or whatever you might pick up? In my experience, most of those Ackley improved cartridges are going to give you about 100 feet per second increased velocity. But gosh, this one I don't think will even give you that much. So I wouldn't fool with that. That way you can just buy factory ammunition. But if you like to play around, like to hand load and manipulate and make things just perfect, then there shouldn't be any reason not to get the AI version. There you go. All right, Doug from South Dakota. Ron, I love your podcasts and the information that you share. Thank you, sir. I have a Savage 1899 lever gun in 22 Savage high power. I'm having a difficult time finding ammo. I know there are custom reloaders who offer ammo, but I'm not wealthy. So are there any sources on 22 high power at a reasonable price? I used to reload and I still could, but even the brass is hard to find. Yeah, you've got a bit of a challenge there, Doug. As I remember, Hornady still offers that. Why don't you check with Hornady, see if they've got the high power. And you might shop an online site, Ammunition Depot, one of our sponsors, and they will often have oddball things that you don't normally find. So check that. And if you buy from Ammo Depot, honey, do they give us a RSO 5% discount? Yeah, if you buy from Ammunition Depot and go RSO 5 as your discount code, you'll get 5% off too. But if you're reloading and you don't have any brass, you can make it out of 30-30 brass. That's kind of the parent cartridge. Originally, they took the 30-30 and very quickly necked it down to 25, and they called it the 25-35. That was available in the 1894 lever-action Winchester rifle. That's the one they then necked down to make the 22 high power. Now, here's the weird thing about the high power, though. even though it's a 22, it was originally designed for a .228-inch diameter bullet, not a .224. So if you've got that old rifle with that barrel, the modern 22 bullets are probably not going to perform. You've got just too much wheel room in there. If it's a really soft bullet, it might obturate to fit that barrel, and you can get some pretty good accuracy. But be aware of that. That's one of the reasons it went obsolete. It was one of the early 22 centerfires that did not use what's now the common .224-inch diameter bullet. Now, can you find .228 bullets? Again, as I remember, Hornady had those, and they still might offer that. So you might want to check there as well. So, yeah, you've got yourself a bit of a challenge, but that was a really hot cartridge for a while. When it first came out, they called it the Imp, the 22 Savage Imp, or high power, and it was driving a 70-grain bullet around 3,000 feet per second. I think you can load it up with a 55-grain bullet and go as fast as, say, 3,200 feet per second. So it's right up there with, say, a 223 or a 22-250. Not quite that fast, but boy, when it first came out, there were a lot of guys showing off with it and shooting really big stuff. And I can remember it used to be advertised as having taken a tiger in India, the old man-eating tiger things, and they shot it with a 22 Imp. Apparently got a perfect one-shot kill kind of a deal. And that raised all kinds of ruckus, people arguing, oh my God, that's way too small to take tigers. Yet the tiger was dead. But yeah, it was kind of I wouldn't say it was a flash in the pan, but after the more modern cartridges came out, this one is rimmed, by the way, and that kind of limits its functionability in bolt action rifles. In lever actions, it was just fine. But yeah, modern rifles, modern cartridges kind of stay away from the rims and just go rimless. Okay, thanks for bringing up that oldie but goodie. Dan in Georgia. Ron, I love your work. A lot of hunters and shooters have an aversion to recoil. Yes, we see diminutive women shooting the 300s, the 375s, and even 416 Magnums with confidence and consistency. We all hear stick fit is important. But short of muzzle brakes, some have aversion to the blast, boy, that's for sure, or a customized rifle, what other advice do you have for people stepping up in power? Perhaps a video with a lady to demonstrate is in order. Betsy.
I have a 375.
Perhaps your wife or Phil Shoemaker's daughter could demonstrate. Boy, yeah. Tia surely could. She shoots a 416 Remington Magnum all the time. I suspect this would be immensely popular with viewers. Thanks. That's a pretty good idea, Dan. We might get Tia over here, and she and Betsy could demonstrate shooting some big kicking rifles. And this winter, maybe we can arrange for that. It's a good idea. Because I agree that once you control the blast and get over the psychological fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be beaten up by this, as Betsy found out when she was shooting a 375 H&H, she can handle it. And as she's always said, I feel the recoil when I'm practicing or at the bench, but I don't feel it when I'm shooting at game. So there's definitely a way to do that. And yeah, we could do a video on learning to control recoil. There are a lot of guys who are afraid of recoil and certainly don't need to be. So that is a good idea. A video. Write that down, Betsy. We're going to do a video on training yourself to absorb recoil without pain and shoot without flinching.
We have a video. Remember the one that we did on recoil? That we did slow motion against the
Against the barn?
Yeah.
Did we do some instruction on how to control it? I think we did. Talked about it at least a bit. Yeah, you guys might want to look at that on our regular channel, Ron Spomer Outdoors on YouTube. Do you remember what we called it, honey? Comparing recoil or something? Yeah, punch in comparing recoil or heavy recoiling rifles. What I did was I think I started with the 22 rimfire.
We might put it up.
We might put it on here. Yeah, let's try to remember to have the team put that link on here. I think I started with the 22 rimfire just to show where there's no recoil. The rifle hardly moves. And then I step up to, say, a 243, and I get a little bit of recoil, and I work my way up to 30-06, and then end up with, what, a 458? 3675 H&H. But we stood against the barn, and we had some reference lines on it so you could see how far the rifle rocked up and I rocked back. So it gives you a good perspective on what these differences in actual absorbed recoil look like. Couldn't feel it. You're not going to be able to feel it when you watch it. I did that for you, but you'll get to see it. And I think what you'll find is that there's really not that much violent recoil. Certainly not a kick of a mule. A mule kicks me and I'm going to go flying off my feet. Hasn't happened with a rifle yet. Well, there was that time that, what was that, a 416? I think it was a 416 Rigby knocked me over. But that one was just poor balance.
What about the one that you shot would really hurt your shoulder?
Oh, that was a 505 Gibbs.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't get knocked over or anything, but that one really hurt. And it was probably because it was built for a tall, huge guy. And I mean, we had a 16.5-inch length of pull, as I remember, on that stock. So I was really out there. And then I had an audience, and I didn't want to embarrass myself by being afraid of a flinch. So my brain said, just pretend it's a 22 rimfire and relax and take the shot. So I was all relaxed, and oh my gosh, did my shoulder take a beating. But at that time, I was having shoulder issues, and a surgeon wanted to do surgery on it. And I didn't want that to happen. So I did some exercises and fixed all that without having the surgery. But at the time, I had a very sensitive shoulder anyway. And then I shoot this big kicking thing, 505 Gibbs. Look it up.
Didn't you get a headache from that too?
No, I got a headache from shooting a 416 Remington Magnum 20 times in a row rather quickly. And that is accumulating the recoil. See, what happens with recoil, it rattles your brain. It's like getting punched. So you can get, what is it when you get your head smashed?
Concussion?
A concussion. Boy, sometimes I forget those big words. You can get a concussion not just from the one, but from a buildup of several. And that's probably what I was doing to myself by shooting again and again and again with that 416. Yeah, got a headache. I said, wait a minute, I need to slow down here. So be aware of all that stuff when you're shooting hard-kicking rifles. Okay, let's see what Colby from Vermont has to say. Ron, I've got a question for you. I'm sighting in my Remington Model 700. It's chambered for 270 Winchester, and I'm having trouble getting it to zero. I'm using a Nikon Buckmaster BDC reticle, ballistic drop compensating reticle, and I can't seem to get enough elevation. I've bore sighted it at 25 yards, and it's grouping consistently a 10 inches low, and I'm not sure a shim could get me there. Do you have any suggestions? Is there a scope with enough elevation adjustment to fix this problem? I've heard of guys rotating their scopes and using their left and right as their vertical adjustment. Would this work? Yeah, that might work for you, but that's kind of a goofy way to do it. Yeah, I think you just need to shim and you may even have the wrong bases on your rifle. Some rifles have a higher base at the back than the front and vice versa. So make sure you've got the right bases for your particular rifle. And gosh, I don't see any reason why that Nikon Buckmaster scope wouldn't adjust. I say the first thing you should do is dial that thing to the center. Get the erector tube inside centered rather than high or low or any adjustment. How do you do that? Well, you can count clicks. Dial your turret, let's say, down all the way until it stops. And then count your clicks as you dial it back up until it stops. Divide that number in half, and that's where you need to go in clicks to get to the middle. You can do it left and right too if you want. An easier way is to put it up against a mirror. Believe it or not, you can see when you put the objective bell of the scope right up against the mirror. Just bam, right there, right like that. And you look through it like normal. You can see the crosshair because there's light coming around and into that glass and bouncing. And you're going to see two crosshairs. One's the real and one's the adjusted off-target reflection kind of thing. I don't know exactly how it works, but it works. Then you can just turn your dials until both of those crosshairs cover one another, and they're in, say, collimation. That's a good way to get to the middle. And then start again with your shooting. And if right away you're way, way, way low or high or something goofy like that, that's when you want to try the different base heights to get things shimmed up. I think that would be the best way to do it. If anyone has better ideas out there, send them in, and we'll see if we can't help Colby out. In Wyoming, we hear from Mark. I have a collection of firearms in calibers 30-30, 6.5 Creedmoor, 308 Winchester, 30-06. I'm trying to figure out if I have all the bases covered. I've really wanted that one rifle to do it all, and I like shooting the 30-06 the least because it's so heavy to pack around. My favorite is the 308, and I hardly ever have to shoot over 300 yards. What would be the one cartridge I should use to hunt the wild game of Western North America? I am mostly interested in deer and elk. Take your 308 and have a party, buddy. Yeah, you're pretty you're fairly redundant here, especially with the 308 and the 30-06. The 308 and 30-06, of course, are going to be shooting the same bullets. The 30-06 will generally throw them about 100 feet per second faster. No big deal. So if you want to shoot in your 308 150 grain bullet or 165 grain bullet, I think those are optimum. You get the right bullet, like a controlled expansion style that's designed to retain most of its weight, penetrate deeply. You'll do just fine on elk up to 300 yards with your 308. The 6-point Creedmoor is 6.5 Creedmoor is used by a lot of Western hunters, but it's a little more marginal. You're looking at 140 to 147 grain bullet. It shoots a little flatter than the 308, but not a heck of a lot. If I were choosing, I think I'd go 308 over the 6.5 Creedmoor, unless you want to do a lot of lighter game shooting. If you mostly hunt pronghorn and deer and not elk, you might enjoy the 6.5 Creedmoor because it'll have a lot less recoil than the 308 Winchester. Neither one is what I would call hard to shoot because of recoil. But that's the route you might want to take. Your 30-30, of course, is just plain fun and effective inside of tight cover, the woods, out to 100, perhaps 150 yards. If you've got a scope on it and you know your trajectory, 150 yards is certainly doable. Sometimes even 200 is. But if you just open sights, I don't know about you, but I have difficulty lining an open sight up on a deer past 100 yards. And if I want to be absolutely honest, probably 50 these days. All right. In Alabama, we have a David who wonders how far away an ethical shot is. How far away is an ethical shot on deer? The vital zone is 10 inches. A bolt shooting 2-inch groups under the excitement of hunting with the best long-range scope would shoot a 10-inch radius at 500 yards. If it's an MOA rifle, it would. So should that hunter shoot at a less than perfect shot goes outside the vitals? Would it be better to shoot at 300 yards, putting bullets into a 6-inch radius instead of that 10-inch circle to dispatch the deer? How far away is an ethical shot on an elk with a 24-inch vital zone? Well, you're on the right track here, David, in figuring all of this stuff out. It's so difficult to say what's an ethical distance for shooting because you've got to take into account not just the rifle and the bullet and its potential for being accurate, but the shooters and the conditions and all these different things. So I always recommend erring on the side of caution here. Be conservative. If you can shoot precisely to 1,000 yards off of a bench under perfect conditions, that doesn't mean you're even going to be good at 500 yards in a hunting situation. So you need to practice and shoot from field positions and see how consistently you can drop your bullet into that vital zone. And I agree. I don't think it should be a 10-inch zone. Just because if you got about a 10-inch chunk inside of that deer's chest broadside, that's vital zone, and you do. In reality, you're much smarter to set up for a 6-inch zone. That means your bullet flies no higher than 6 inches from your point of aim, and when it drops lower than 6 inches from your point of aim, you're again out of that 6-inch circle. But that gives you 3 inches up and down and right and left for a fudge factor. Call your wind wrong and that kind of stuff. And some people would say, boy, that's even a little bit too much. You should probably go with the 4-inch target. You ought to be able to put your bullet within an inch or two of your aim point. And man, that gets difficult out there at long ranges. Under field conditions, guys. So I would say set up your rifle with I have found a 6-inch radius is probably reasonable, and it's worked well for me. You can go a little bit tighter if you want to be extra conservative. But the key is to shoot in field positions, sitting, prone, cold, hot, gloves on, coats on, just all the different things that will probably be happening to you in a hunting situation, and in variable winds, and be able to know that you can put your bullet within a couple of inches of your aiming point out to whatever that distance is. Then you're going to know your maximum distance for an ethical shot. The other way to think about it, well, there are two. One, what is the required minimum velocity or energy of the bullet on impact to perform properly, to expand as it should? A lot of them are 2,000 feet per second, some are 1,800, some are as low as, or they claim are as low as 1,400 feet per second. Need to know that. That might determine how far you shoot. And the other is the time of flight of the bullet. This just happened to me this year, and it was only a 300-yard shot, and just when I broke that trigger, the deer started to run, squirted forward, and my just behind the shoulder shot became a just in front of the ham gut shot. That's how quickly things can happen because of the flight time of the bullet, but also your reaction time. When your brain says, okay, everything's perfect now, squeeze that trigger, there's a little bit of time elapse in there, and then the time for the firing pin to push the primer and ignite the load and all the rest of it doesn't amount to much but microseconds, but made the difference. So you've got to consider all of those things. And thanks for doing that, because I think it's a smart thing for all of us to do, is to know where our long-range accuracy is. All right, in California, David, you need to check the volume on your ads on Spotify. I don't even know how to get to Spotify. It's quite shocking to be listening quietly to you and your guests and be rocked and deafened by the loudness of the ad. I like your podcast, but I can't continue unless you get this fixed. Please get this fixed so I continue listening to you. Boy, David, I hope you continue to listen to me, but I just don't have the wherewithal to fix this.
RSO TV.
Bingo! My saleswoman has the cure. Go to RSO TV. Go to my website, ronspomeroutdoors.com. Look at the top bar, find RSO TV. Click on it. It will give you directions for signing up. It's going to cost you $5 big a month. Just think that's one coffee at the fancy coffee shop. But you can listen to all of my podcasts and videos ad-free, and the volume will remain consistent throughout. That's the best I can do for you. I cannot control Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the other ones because I am as ignorant as can be about that sort of thing. I don't even know how to upload a podcast.
We don't have any control.
We don't have any control. Yep, we're controlless. And we're not control freaks, we're controlless. But we are freaks. And we thank all of you freaks for listening in and joining us here and cutting us a little slack, because we need it. But we do like to hunt honest and shoot straight, and hope you do as well. Please keep writing in with good questions and comments. You can pat us on the back, or you can slap us upside the head for anything we've done wrong. We love to cover all of it. It makes all of us a little bit wiser, a little bit smarter down the road. We'll see you next time.